Hey everybody, this is David, MSOM 602, Lesson 2 review and Lesson 3 preview coming to you today from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Behind me, that needle is the Burj Khalifa, which is the world's tallest building. It's 2,700 and some odd feet tall. It's over a half a mile tall, debating on whether or not I want to go up in that today. It's pretty expensive, but once in your life, right? Dubai and Abu Dhabi that you saw last week are really great places to be in the Middle East. Very friendly to Westerners, very modern. The construction that's going on in the city is really overwhelming to the eye, but just a great few days I'll spend here in Dubai. So let's talk a little bit about Lesson 2. I want to recap for you Lesson 2, where we talked about leadership in the workplace, and you saw a little bit about the Lead Without Saying Anything video. I hope you found that interesting and maybe just a little humorous too, how sometimes leaders, and using conductors as an example here, can lead just by the expressions and by certain things that they do. Make no mistake, nonverbal communication goes a long way in leadership today. So that's was something hopefully you found interesting. Also in Lesson 2, you had your first memo exercise, and again, I always want to stress in these, don't overthink these, and also make sure that you don't write them as a research paper. These are inter-office memos where you are explaining to your rank and file members different concepts as it relates to your organization or your department, depending on what you've chosen, moving towards a servant leadership model. So the first one was really a definition of servant leadership. So you provided that for your people. Okay, and then the first application, well, the only application exercise this week, talked about workplace diversity and servant leadership, and how do you lead people who are, in many instances, totally different than you are. And so I was really interested to see your comments on that, because again, diversity in the workplace doesn't just necessarily mean diversity of ethnicity, diversity of gender. It can be diversity of thought, and that's really the area that I wanted to focus on this week. Okay, so that's Lesson 2 in the bag, pretty little bow on it, okay? So now let's talk about Lesson 3. Lesson 3 begins to introduce you to an individual named Larry Spears. And Larry Spears worked with Greenleaf's concepts of servant leadership and created 10 servant leadership characteristics. And all 10 of these are really, really good. But what I ask you to do this week is to take 5 of them. Take your top 5. And I'm not so much interested in the 5 that you select, because again, I think you could select any of the 5 and all be very good in those areas. I'm more interested in the 5 that you selected and why you selected those. So make sure that when you select the 5 that you think are the most important, I'm interested in you explaining why you selected those. So make sure you draw that conclusion through that. And then the first application this week is a conversation between Colleen Barrett, who's an ex-CEO for Southwest Airlines, and Ken Blanchard. And the book called Lead with Love, one of your ebooks, is really a conversation between those two individuals. I really love the way that book is set up, because sometimes we read things and then we have to make some assumptions. Well, this really eliminates all the assumptions, because you're just kind of a fly on the wall between the conversations of Ken Blanchard and Colleen Barrett. And so what I'd ask you to do in this one is really to help apply some of the servant leadership principles, perhaps some of the 5 that you selected this week that you may think are the most important. And how is it that Colleen Barrett is explaining that those are visible in Southwest Airlines when she was there? Okay, so that's the flies. So that's the first application exercise. The second application exercise this week talks about perhaps one of your favorite things and mine, going to the DMV. Have you ever had a great experience going to the DMV to get license for your car or to get a driver's license I can probably say I can't recall ever having an instance where it was just a pleasurable thing to do. However, the example that Ken Blanchard talks about in this exercise this week really was presented from a servant leadership perspective by the director of that Department of Motor Vehicle. So I'm asking you to look at that this week and go through that and apply some of the personal examples that you'll see in that story, because there's some really neat examples that director of motor vehicles provided for his people that also influence the customer as well. All right, still traveling, still totally accessible if you need me, so I encourage you just to study hard this week, and if you have any questions or comments, bounce me an email and I'll get back to you very quickly. Have a great week. Study hard.